Now we live in or at least those of us who live in the West in particular, live in a highly medicalized culture, so much so that it's actually very often difficult to speak about health or ill health without first thinking about medicine. And so we have a biomedical understanding of what health is and what healing is. And tied in with that, and sitting at the heart of that, is an assumption that health has to do with the absence of illness. And so I go to a doctor with something that's wrong with me. The doctor uses his or her medical skills to identify what's wrong with me, then gives me therapy or medication, and I get better. So health is understood as a movement from ill health to health. And that's all very well, but there are some people with some conditions that are never going to get better. So does that mean you're going to be ill forever? There's all sorts of tension in there. But my point is not that. My point is that within Scripture, health has a very different meaning. There's no equivalent way of thinking to the idea that health is simply the absence of illness. A very interesting term in relation to health is the concept of shalom. So shalom is one of the richest words in Scripture. At one level, it means peace. Well, actually, at all levels, it means peace, but it's a particular kind of peace. It's peace within yourself, peace between yourself and others, peace with your community, peace with the land, peace with creation, and ultimately peace with God. So it's a big, rich, and deep peace. But within that, understanding of health emerges, which is interesting. So shalom means peace at all these levels, but it also means justice, wholeness, and right relationship with God. So to be healthy, according to the model of shalom, is to be in right relationship with God. And that's not dependent on the presence or absence of illness or ill health. It's to do with connection. So you could be, I don't know, an Olympic athlete who just won the 100 meters or whatever it is, and just standing on the podium with your big medal, and you could be really unhealthy because you're not experiencing shalom. You're just simply experiencing yourself and your own self-centeredness. Or you could be dying, you could be on your last legs in a hospice, and you could be really healthy because you're in right relationship with God, you're in right relationship with yourself, right relationship with others, and so on and so forth. So within shalom, or the presence of shalom is not determined by the absence of illness or disruption. It's determined by the presence of God and by the presence of others. So mental health in this light is not about achieving calm or escaping pain, although, of course, we want these things, but they're not always available. It's about living towards shalom, even in the midst of our struggles. In Luke chapter 8, we meet a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. Her story will give a good example of not just shalom, but also a different way of thinking about healing. But she makes her way through the crowd and she touches Jesus' robe. And immediately this condition is taken from her. And Jesus realizes that power has gone out of him. And he looks around for her. And notice what he says. He calls her daughter. I think about how profound that is. Somebody that's previously been an untouchable, somebody that nobody wants to be, somebody that's completely on the margins, he calls her daughter, a close, intimate term. And she comes forward and they have this conversation. And then at the end of the conversation, Jesus says, "Go, your faith has healed you." And you're thinking, well, no, she's already been healed. But then you realize she's been cured. The healing came when she began to understand who Jesus was. So that tension between healing and curing is really important within the context of shalom, because, the reality is that many conditions that we live with are not going to be cured, but healing becomes a possibility in this way of thinking, because healing is connection. So Jesus pauses, he listens to her, he sees her, and then he gives her back a name, which is a very, very beautiful picture. And at the end of that, you also notice he says, "Go in peace, go in shalom." So this is not just a cure, it's a healing. But for the purposes of this course, I want you just to hold on to that difference between healing and curing. Curing is a medical term that to do with getting rid of something. Healing is to do with connection. Healing is relational, communal. It makes room for God and for one another.